At the exact moment the atom was deliberately split for the purpose of destruction, something far greater than matter was torn apart. There was no sound capable of announcing this invisible rupture. No siren warned of what was about to happen. Humanity did not realize it at that instant, but by releasing the energy locked within the nucleus of matter, it also opened an irreversible fracture in history itself. The explosion was not merely physical. It was symbolic. It marked the point at which human beings stopped fearing only one another and began to fear themselves. For centuries, power had been measured in numbers of soldiers, in conquered territories, in walls raised and weapons held by human hands. Even the bloodiest conflicts still followed a logic that could be understood. There were battlefronts, defensive lines, advances and retreats. Destruction, however brutal, was still limited by the human capacity to carry it out. The atomic bomb shattered that logic in a single instant. It condensed the destructive power of entire armies into an object small enough to be carried by a single aircraft. For the first time, the end required no invasion and no direct confrontation. It required only a decision. When the sky ignited over Hiroshima, it was not only a city that was lost. It was the belief that there were natural limits to human violence. The light that blinded eyes that day also blinded the world to what would follow. Many believed they had witnessed the peak of destruction, the highest point beyond which nothing worse could exist. That belief was comforting, but deeply mistaken. The true impact of the bomb was not in the initial flash, nor in the shockwave, nor in the shadows burned into concrete. It was in the silence that followed, a silence heavy with terrifying possibilities. From that moment on, the world entered a new era without realizing it. There was no official ceremony, no formal declaration. The change was psychological before it was political. For the first time, humanity knew it possessed the means to erase itself, not in some distant future, not as a philosophical abstraction, but as a concrete technical reality. That awareness altered everything. It changed how nations related to one another, how leaders made decisions, and how ordinary people imagined the future. The atomic bomb did not need to be used again to continue killing. Its mere existence became a constant force over a collective thought. It transformed fear into a permanent state, a fear without a face, without a date, without a warning, a fear that required no action to exist. It was enough to remember that the button was there, somewhere, waiting to be pressed. The decades that followed were not defined by peace, but by an artificial stability built on mutual terror. The great powers did not trust one another. They watched one another. They counted warheads, calculated ranges, and simulated scenarios of total destruction. A fragile balance emerged, sustained not by cooperation, but by the certainty that any attack would mean the end of all involved. It was a cold logic, mathematical and devoid of morality. Survival ceased to be a matter of justice and became a matter of calculation. In this new world, war changed its shape. Conflicts continued to occur, but rarely through direct confrontation between nuclear powers. Instead, indirect wars arose, fought in distant territories through allies and intermediaries. The planet became a chessboard where pieces were sacrificed to avoid the final clash. The atomic bomb did not eliminate violence. It merely reorganized it, making it more dispersed and, paradoxically, more constant. Meanwhile, far from command rooms and strategic maps, human consequences continued to unfold slowly. In Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the end did not arrive on the day of the explosion. It stretched across years, across decades. Radiation did not announce itself. It had no smell, no color, no sound. It infiltrated bodies, altered cells, crossed generations. People who had survived the initial heat began to fall ill without clear explanation. Children were born carrying the marks of an event that had occurred before they even existed. Suffering became silent, difficult to measure, and easy to ignore. The world, eager to move forward, chose not to look too deeply at these consequences. It was more comfortable to treat the bomb as a historical milestone than as an open wound, easier to celebrate the end of the war than to confront the true price paid by ordinary civilians. And so, collective memory began to fracture. The event remained in books, but its deeper implications were pushed to the margins of global consciousness. Over time, nuclear technology began to be presented through a new narrative, no longer solely as a weapon, but as a promise. Clean energy, scientific progress, energy independence. The atom, which had destroyed cities, was now described as a solution for the future. This duality created an unprecedented moral dilemma. The same force capable of lighting millions of homes was capable of extinguishing millions of lives, and there was no clear line separating one from the other. All it took was a shift in intention, a political decision, a human error. The atomic bomb forced science to confront its own shadow. For the first time, technological progress could no longer be considered neutral. Every discovery carried the potential to be transformed into an instrument of mass destruction. This created a new responsibility, but also a new kind of anxiety. The question ceased to be, only can we do this? And became, should we? And more unsettling still, what happens if someone decides to do it anyway? On a psychological level, humanity began to live with the constant idea of absolute ending. Before, collapse was always localized. A city fell, an empire collapsed, a civilization was replaced by another. History continued. After the bomb, the notion emerged that there might be no continuation, that the right mistake at the wrong moment could end everything. This possibility changed how people thought about the future. Tomorrow ceased to be a guaranteed promise and became a daily concession. This shift was reflected in culture, art, and philosophy. Stories about the end of the world ceased to be mythological and became technical, no longer divine punishments, but human failures. No longer mystical prophecies, but scenarios based on real calculations. The apocalypse stopped being an abstract concept and became a plausible project. Over generations, however, something curious happened. Fear began to fade, not because the threat disappeared, but because prolonged coexistence with it made it part of everyday life. People were born into a world where weapons capable of destroying the entire planet already existed. They grew up without ever witnessing a nuclear explosion. For them, the bomb was a distant, almost theoretical concept, and this normalization carried with it a new danger. Forgetting, when a threat becomes familiar, it loses its power to warn. The atomic bomb, which once shocked the world, became just another element of the international political landscape. Treaties were signed and violated. Warheads were reduced and modernized. Speeches spoke of security, while arsenals capable of destroying the Earth many times over remained, stored in silence. The contradiction became routine. The greatest risk was no longer explicit hatred between nations, but gradual indifference. The automation of defense systems, the reliance on algorithms, the speed of the less human the command chain became, the greater the chance of an unintentional error. The bomb does not require hatred. It requires only negligence, a false alarm, a misinterpretation, a second less of hesitation. The untold consequences of the atomic bomb are not found only in death tolls or maps of irradiated zones. They are found in the way humanity learned to live under a permanent threat and still move forward as if it were normal. They exist in the silent tension embedded in global decisions. They exist in the responsibility imposed on a species that still struggles to overcome its own impulses. We created a weapon that demands absolute maturity from a civilization still learning to deal with basic differences, a weapon that allows no mistakes in a world built on failure. The atomic bomb is, at once, a product of human intelligence and a continuous test of its moral limits. As long as it exists, the future will remain conditional upon choice, not upon guarantees, not upon certainty, but upon the renewed decision, day after day, not to cross a line that, once crossed, cannot be redrawn. The divided atom stands as a silent reminder that the greatest power ever created by humanity is also the most fragile, because it depends entirely on self-control. And so the world continues to turn, cities continue to grow, generations continue to be born, under the constant shadow of an invention that cannot be The atomic bomb is not merely part of the past. It is a continuous presence, an echo that never fully fades. The true question is not whether it will be used again, but whether humanity is capable of living indefinitely with something it should never use. Because in the end, the fate of the world is not tied to a button, nor to a warhead, nor to a missile. It is tied to the human capacity to remember, to reflect, and to choose consciously. And as long as that choice continues to be made, the silence will remain, a heavy silence loaded with history, waiting forever for someone to decide to break it.